Welcome back to Summer is Coming, Episode 4. I'm your host, Tiny Grimes, and I'm joined, as always, by Neil, the real deal. And Neil, how much Game of Thrones in did you do this week?
I did a lot of Game of Thrones, and at least for by my standards. We met up on a few days ago, and we played a bunch of games, and then I played a couple of games on our usual game day of Wednesday, and so I've gotten to play a lot of 2.0 this week.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, we actually recorded some of those games, and they will be available for people's perusing pleasure. I don't know, what do we want to say? Maybe early next week?
Hopefully early next week.
All right, that sounds good. The games are pretty good. I had some reasonable commentary. I think I liked them. Was there any deck that you played a lot this week that you really liked, Neil? Or are you still? Actually, let's back up. I hear you got some core sets, Neil.
In a sense, I caved in, and one or two of our friends had actually gone and printed off. They went to Kinko's and they printed off three full color copies of the core set to get a complete play set. Now, initially, I kind of scoffed at that, but with the mounting delays on the 2.0 core set and the especially wanting to talk about it here, I decided to take the plunge and I went and printed off my own copies from Kinko's. And even just before this was cutting out hundreds of little slips of paper that have the Game of Thrones cards printed on them.
And just to be clear, when the core sets do release, you're buying them, correct?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still buying three core sets. I just wanted to be able to play from now until then with my own decks because I like to make kind of jankier, crazier decks rather than depending on whatever terrible thing Tiny's built. And once I do have three core sets, this will be great. I'll be able to have like six or eight different decks built so that I can, have some serious joust decks, have some fun joust decks, maybe even have some melee decks.
Wow, I don't think we can talk anymore. Seriously though, I think it's a good idea. I don't. So if you're gonna print up proxies, that's cool. We don't condone you not buying the core set. Support the game, buy the core set. But if in the meantime you want to print up proxies, go for it. You can play with your friends. And like Neil said, I mean, you're gonna want a lot of copies of cards like Put to the Sword, Tears of List, Littlefinger. These are just cards that are going to go in lots of decks. For me, Tyrion. I could probably have 27 Tyrions and be like, I could really use a 28th Tyrion. So I may do the same as well just to have those copies of cards because I only have two core sets. And Neil, how would you rate my current proxies? Excellent or greater than excellent?
I would rate them somewhere between garbage and vomit worthy.
I was expecting more like excellent. I'm kind of surprised to hear you say that. Yeah, they're really bad. Thankfully, Neil wrote up some proxies for me that are at least legible. They're still terrible, but they're legible. So
Yeah.
yeah, basically, do what you can to get the cards. The delays. If you have your own printed core sets, at least when the delays hit, it's not as devastating, right? You can recover. And then what's going to happen if they run out? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if not everyone gets cores. This could happen.
I
So,
hope not. I have mine pre-ordered, so that should be enough. I hope to secure them on day one, but we'll just see.
yep. All right. So, what were you playing with your new core sets, Neil?
Well, earlier in the week when we had been testing, we had been this whole week has been a lot of different decks playing against Baratheon fealty.
Mm-hmm. Who
So,
mostly piloted that Baratheon fealty deck?
the one and only Tiny Grimes.
Goodness, that deck is amazing. By the way, it is so my exact deck that I like. Flexible, powerful, meta shaping. Oh, I love that deck so much. Go ahead, Neil.
That deck is exceedingly frustrating to play against.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't let any of your characters do anything. It looks in your hand and gets rid of your best cards so that you can't play anything. It's just a mean deck. And so I this week was playing a little bit of Stark, a little bit of Greyjoy, a little bit of Targaryen, and even a few games as the Night's Watch to just try different things, see what works and what doesn't.
And just to follow up, how many times did you beat my Bear fealty deck?
Once,
I
I
I
think.
know the answer is zero. I was able to beat you once with the Stark deck when you were Baratheon, but you were not able to thwart my Baratheon deck. It's unbeatable. Yeah. You don't look happy about that. Are you still angry about the week? Because by the end, by last night, you were just kind of in a bad mood. Like we play and you'd be like, "This is stupid." You were grumbling and you're like visibly angry about having to play Bear Fealty again.
Yeah, I mean, it does make me angry and it makes me a little bit worried, to be honest, because
Yeah,
it's tough to find anything that even, at least in our testing, has come close to being able to even put up a good fight consistently.
I'm really torn right now as to what to do. There's one half of me that says I want to just post this version of the deck on Card Game DB and have a call to arms. Beat this deck. Let's work together as a community, figure out what beats it, because something has to at least be
Yeah,
close and sort of help fix the meta a bit. But then the other half of me says, do I really want everyone and their mom playing this deck when the core sets drop, and then everyone hating Game of Thrones because their buddy was like, I went on Card Game DB and I read about this deck that can't be beaten, and so now I have it, and that guy's like, what? I just threw together like a starter deck. What do you mean you have this deck? And then he crushes everyone and everyone's sad. So I'm really torn on that one. I don't know what to do. I just haven't decided yet.
yeah. I guess when you explain it like that, it makes some sense. I think that the more free information there is, the better it usually is
Mm.
for the game, assuming that the play testers and designers have done their jobs even reasonably well.
Heads on spikes makes me worried that they haven't.
Well,
Oh
we'll
well.
see.
Yeah, we'll see. And by the way, it's been interesting feedback. Last week we talked extensively about how bad Heads on Spikes is design wise for the current card pool. And I have not heard from one person who said they disagreed with us. And I've heard from probably 20 people who said, spot on, that card is just a terrible card to have in the game right now. So I'm not sure there's anything we can do about it, Neil, but at least we can know we're not on an island.
Yeah, we'll be on the right side of history.
Yes. All right, so this week for me, I've mostly played Baratheon fealty. I was sort of the other side, right? We were in this together, building some decks to try to beat it. I came up with some, you came up with some, and in the end, it's a tough deck to beat. I thought Targaryen Stan would beat it. Didn't really. I thought maybe Stark Stan with Robb and Ned would be enough. That didn't seem to be enough. Your wall deck was very interesting because it
It
was able
actually
to do
it
stuff.
actually came pretty close to beating it. It was really once Chamber of the Painted Table hit the table.
Yeah.
The wall gaining power was really just kind of giving you power, and I couldn't close out from there.
Yeah, I mean, and it felt like you had best case scenario pretty quick. You had a duped wall, you had old bear out, and then you had a bunch of other dudes so that I couldn't really win challenges, and it was really difficult. It was a fun game because it was hard. Most games are just steamrolls with a bear deck, and it's interesting. I would never would have thought that the wall was the counter to the bear deck, and I'm not sure it is. I'd like to see
Yeah,
more of a regular case scenario and see how that goes. But it was fun, and it gave me hope that the wall deck is at least a reasonable deck.
it might be. I played a game just before that one against a Lannister Banner Tyrell deck that I mean I got a really great start with the Night's Watch, but I kind of crushed the deck. Um,
Nice.
with just a lot of early shenanigans that shut down his resources, shut down his characters, took his characters, and was able to really just put a stranglehold on the game.
Nice. I think I saw that. It was pretty impressive. You basically flooded out the board, and he was looking at it and going, well, I'm not sure what to do. It is interesting because so there's two sides to this point. It's really difficult for me to bring two decks and have people play them because I build a very specific type of deck. And so I'm like, is this really what the meta looks like? Or have I created like this whole Tiny Grimes mini meta in my own head that I force upon my friends? But then when I play some of my friends, I go, okay, the decks I've made are better. I'm not going to name names, but there's a friend of ours. He had that deck you were talking about. He had one copy of Right in it, one copy of Left in it,
Yeah.
um, two copies of Joffrey, and you're just looking at this deck and going, dude, this is not the most efficient build of this deck. Like, if you have three rights and three lefts, maybe that's kind of cool, and maybe you can get something happening. I tend to say
Yeah.
no, but on their own, they're just terrible cards.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting when we talked afterwards and we helped modify the deck. But what I'm trying to get to is that even though the Barra deck looks fairly unbeatable right now and it never loses, it's really in a limited meta, right? Like you said, not everyone has their cores. You just made yours. You kind of threw some decks together. And it'll be interesting to see how the deck stands up to a real, actual meta with all the best minds at it. So I have hope
Yeah.
that someone will find something great.
I think so.
All right, I think we should move on to something that I found very interesting in 2.0, which is challenge types. So I'd say, I guess we should talk briefly about 1.0. How would you have ranked the challenges in importance generally in 1.0? Now, obviously, they change depending on builds and archetypes, but just generally speaking, how would you rank the challenges?
Yeah, I think that they also depend a lot on what point in the game you're in,
Mm-hmm.
the early game, mid game, late game. But
Certainly.
generally, to me, in my limited 1.0 experience, it felt like military was most important. Then then probably intrigue, then probably power, though intrigue and power really depended on what sort of deck you were playing. But military was always very important in 1.0.
Yeah, I would have probably ordered them intrigue, military, and then a distant power,
Mm.
unless the deck was especially like a rush deck or something like that. But certainly military was of tremendous importance. Uh, and so I'm going to say I'll rank mine in 2.0. I think in 2.0 it goes probably intrigue, huge drop off to power, tremendous drop off to military, to the point where for most of the decks I've played, military is a completely pointless challenge. Other than, kneel some guys out perhaps. If you have renown, that's great. If you can pick up unopposed, that can be great. But the actual military claim itself has been almost completely pointless. Have you found the same to be the case?
I've certainly found it to be the case against the Baratheon deck, because there are so many little weenies that you don't really mind throwing out there, and they'll often get dupes up pretty quick. That a lot of times military, it's not as catastrophic as it seems like it might be. It still might force some tough choices and put you into a less beneficial position, but it's not like I think it felt like sometimes in 1.0 where you're like, well, my entire board is gone now.
Yeah, it's just a different feel. In 1.0, you knew everything would die all game, right? So, like, if they valored you and you were able to put some guys out, there was a good chance that military claim was just going to destroy you because you're only going to have the 1 to 2 guys out, and then you're always fighting to keep a guy on board. In 2.0, without Valor and only having Wildfire, cutting the board down to 3 guys, 2 of them with dupes, it just doesn't do that much. Even a military after a Wildfire is usually like, I'll lose Bob's dupe, and they're like, well, that's great. I mean, maybe I can figure out some way. Now, I would say a caveat with that is try not to lose by 5 or more against a heavy military deck. That can be catastrophic.
Yeah.
But even so, a lot of times you'll have a dupe. And so one of the reasons why I think Intrigue is so good is not only does it pull potentially key cards out of hands, one thing that's interesting is with stuff costing so much money, oftentimes they'll be able to play one awesome guy and have a second one in hand. And then if you do an Intrigue, you might just yank it out. You might yank out their whole next turn play. And then in addition to that, Tears of Lys is really dangerous as well. And so if you have a Bob out or a Stannis out or, a Ned out or a Rob out, some big guy, Asha, they can easily be Tears. And so Intrigue becomes this scary challenge because not only does it maybe kill a guy, it also could rip away the best card out of your hand. And so it feels like intrigue is even more powerful than it was in 1.0, and it was pretty powerful. But military just seems to be that challenge where 9 times out of 10 I'm looking at the board and going, well, I don't really care if any of these guys die. I'm going to wildfire soon anyway, so killing this random chump does very little for me. And it's been fascinating to watch newer players, because newer players, when they play Game of Thrones, they go like this, and I had someone say this to me. So military challenge is obviously the best challenge, right? And here's my reasoning: you get board control and resource advantage, because not only are you killing something, you are killing something that they paid for with resources.
And I had to look at a card on.
Yeah, exactly. And I looked at the person and said, that is extremely reasonable, and I would say probably wrong. They just couldn't believe it, and it's really fun to play with people who aren't quite as experienced, and you're like, I'll do a power challenge, and they look at you and like, what? I thought for sure you would military here. And I'm like, well, I mean, either way you're going to oppose it. This way I get, it's my choice is between getting a power off your house or that random chump off the board. I'll take the power off the house. You're going to play another random chump next turn. I don't care. So it's been pretty interesting.
It is. I feel like compared to 1.0, maybe this is wrong, but it feels like you gain power at a much faster clip in general in 2.0. Have you found that to be the case?
I don't know. It's interesting. I feel like, I mean, I've played a lot of Bear lately, and with Bear I would definitely agree, because you have cards like the Painted Table, you have Bob with Renown. Because you're kneeling so many guys, you're actually pushing a lot more unopposed challenges than maybe you would in 1.0, where you have, 12 guys on the board. You build up this massive hand size. They valor, you can just put 12 more guys on the board. So that may be. Also, there's a lot of decks like, Greyjoy that's able to get a bunch of unopposed more easily. Tyrion leads to more unopposed challenges, and so I think it's interesting, because I think the few guys with stealth are actually sort of pushing this. And also you have important characters like Jaime that gets his pseudo renown, and so yeah, I guess I would agree the game seemed to go slightly faster, but I wonder if it's just because there's less control in the meta, and so when there's more control, the games sort of get bogged down more. Whereas Bear is a weird deck because it's a control deck, but it gets power at an alarmingly high rate for a control deck. That's what makes the deck so good. It does everything. It controls. Yeah. It rips stuff out of your hand, and it grabs power all over the place. And you're like, how do you have 9 power on turn 3? You haven't done anything, and all you did was kneel all my guys. And you're like, I don't know, actually. We'd have to go back through the replay and talk about it.
Yeah, it is kind of baffling. I've had that feeling sometimes on like turn 3 against the Bear deck, just being like, wait, we need to go back. There had to have been something we missed where you like didn't pay full price for something, or you took extra power when you shouldn't have.
Right, like instead of reaching in and pulling 1 out, I reached in and took 6 out and was like, here, I'm crushing you. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah, it really is. But I think, so it's going to be interesting moving forward. First of all, everything I just said is irrelevant in a dedicated kill deck, right? So if you're running Ice and 2 Claim Plots and Storm of Swords and maybe 2 Wildfires and a March.
Put to the sword.
Yeah, everything I said is irrelevant. I'm talking about sort of a main, just a regular deck. Military really does seem to have dropped in value. We tried, I should say, to build that dedicated start kill deck. It just didn't go that well, did it?
No, I mean, it wasn't awful, but it just still didn't quite have the punch to get through all of the weenies and take out all of the different big dudes that Barra can put on the table.
Yeah, they get duped up, or you just don't let them win a military by 5. You kneel out their big guy that's going to win the military, so then they put in like 2 guys to make sure they win by 5, but then you just go, I'll block with Davos. Now it's only a 3 that you won by. I'll kill Davos. He goes back to hand. And I'll just play him next turn.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that have to go right for you to end up doing put to the sword on someone like Bob, because you have to not spend all of your money in marshalling.
Yeah.
So you still have 2 to pay for it. Then you have to not have your big guys knelt out so that you can actually win a military by 5. and they have to not have Seen in Flames to just pull it out of your hand.
Yeah, it's a lot has to, a lot really has to go your way. I did a while ago, so I feel like the last couple of weeks I've sort of come into my own with the Bear deck and really understand what's in other decks a lot better. But about 3 weeks ago, I was playing with a less refined Bear deck against someone in our meta, and they were playing Stark, and they were able to do that to me because I made a little misplay on the first turn and didn't play a Chud with Bob, and I was like, it'll be all right. Oh no, I had a Chud with Bob, right? And I could have played two, but I think I saved one back to do something else. And they did the military, and then it was a one claim plot, but I knew they wouldn't be able to win by 5, right? So I was like, I'll be okay. And then they did
Hmm.
Winter's Coming, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh god, that feels so terrible. Like I probably could have stopped that, but I wasn't really thinking. And the funny thing is that person, every time I see them, and I'm like, yeah, we need to really figure out the Bear deck, and he's like, I'll beat you with the Stark deck. That Stark deck's fine. I'm like, okay, that's fine. You did. You definitely did. But
Hmm.
we don't count it in testing because of how it happened. But so hopefully we'll find something. And I do think military challenges will become more valuable. I have to think some Valor is going to come around, or maybe even just Varies. Maybe people will start running multiple copies of Varies. I know one of our friends does. He sent me a deck list, a Lanny No Agenda with 2 Varies in it. And I was like, what the heck is happening? And I
Yeah,
messaged
I
him.
threw one copy into one of my decks, but I'm of course one copy. It's a crapshoot if you'll see it.
Yeah, exactly. 2 seems interesting because if you can pull off all the dupes and knock all the other guys out, then the next turn maybe you can follow up with a Storm of Swords or a Khal Drogo turn where you get multiple militaries. I don't know. It feels unlikely, but maybe there's something there. So maybe that's the next
Yeah,
test point.
could be good.
All right, well, I think we should move on to the house of the day. And the house that we're going to look at today is Greyjoy. Those bloody Krakens. And Greyjoy, what so far has been your impression of them? How have you liked playing with them?
I've very much enjoyed playing with Greyjoy. They have some very strong, big characters. That's really where their power lies, I feel, in their more middle to high end unique characters. I guess that's true with pretty much all of the houses, but
Yeah.
they just have some very strong, aggressive characters and pretty strong events. So I like Greyjoy overall. I feel like they're maybe one of the more cohesive factions coming
Mm.
out of the core set.
Yeah, I like that word cohesive. I feel like that's both a positive and a limiting factor, right? Because a lot of their strength comes from being mono Greyjoy if you're going to run the main house. Cards like, goodness, why can I never remember the name of it? The one that saves a guy. Risen from the Sea. There you go. Risen from the Sea, Damp Hair, a number of cards that Iron Fleet Scout that are interacting only with Greyjoy characters. And yeah, you could play them on a house, but it would be sort of ridiculous. And then if you bring in something, say Tyrell or Lannister or Martell to help control or Baratheon, you lose a lot of the flexibility with these cards. And so it's an interesting spot that they're in where they are both very cohesive and it works together really well, but at the same time it makes it a little bit harder to do other things. I know this is going to surprise you, Neil, but I don't read cards that carefully. And I blocked somebody with Littlefinger, and then I pumped him with Iron Fleet Scout, and my opponent said, actually, you can't pump him. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm first player. I pumped him by 2, in fact. And he's like, you should probably read where it says Greyjoy only. And I was like, well, that's a wrecking.
Yep.
I am screwed this game.
Hmm.
So, yeah. But it's interesting. So I haven't actually tried to banner them with anybody for this exact reason that it becomes really difficult to banner them with somebody. Which is funny. Apparently, we have the banner card up here. I'm not sure why that is. Uh, but
It's a
yeah,
nice
so
card.
so it's interesting. I personally don't like Greyjoy that much. I like a lot about them. What I don't like is they feel very one-sided. One-dimensional. It's like, okay, I've got big bodies. They got stealth. I'm going to stealth you and punch you in the face. Don't duck. And then if you
Yeah,
do duck,
it sounds like a great plan.
then if you duck, bob, or weave, they're like, oh, I don't really know what I'm gonna do now. So I haven't really enjoyed playing them that much, but I do agree. I think there's a ton of power there. Not only the big guys, but the stealthy guys. Theon and
Yeah,
Asha having stealth, they're really strong.
stealth
Balin can
is
pick it up.
so strong.
Yeah, so I like them theoretically, but I haven't really liked how I've played them so far. I think I'd be more interesting to play them as a choke deck and try that out rather than just a punch you in the face deck. I feel like, especially in a Baratheon meta where punch you in the face doesn't work quite as well because your guys with the gloves are often kneeling. It makes it a little harder to punch someone in the face while you're laying on the ground. Ah!
Yeah.
All right, let's look at the cards. Let's start with the big bad boy. You're on Crow's Eye. This dude is a beast.
Yeah, one of the few Tricons in the core set. He can do whatever challenge he darn well pleases.
And not just that, but he is a rude dude, pulling
Hmm.
locations. So not only can you pillage, discard a card from the top, and hope it's a location. By the way, I played against a friend this last yesterday. 6 turns I had out Euron Crow's Eye. 6 challenges I won. I never hit a location. He never had one in his discard pile. He did not play a location the whole game. So I couldn't even intrigue him out. He never drew them. I even had a We Do Not Sow, but I couldn't play it because he didn't have a location. So in that rare circumstance, he's going to be terrible. But Neil, I think you might want to talk about some circumstances where he was pretty good for you.
Yeah, I had a game where I think 3 turns in a row I was able to win a challenge, pillage, and I didn't even have to use the pillage to seed your discard pile with locations. I think one time I did We Do Not Sow on your red keep,
I remember that very well.
which was huge. And
Yep.
so then I stole that. Then another time I stole a King's Road that you had used to reduce
Mm-hmm.
something by 3. So then on my next turn, I get to reduce something by 3. He can definitely have a huge effect. Renown is also a, great keyword on something this big and beefy. Being a lord means you can reduce him with the noble plot. Being an Ironborn means you can save him with Risen from the Sea or bring him back with Damp Hair. And he's just a big, strong 7 cost faction leader.
Yeah, he's really great. I mean, when you stole my red keep with him, it was like, all right, he's awesome. This guy is even better than I thought because you can just go intrigue or whatever unopposed with him. We do not sow. Kill the location of your choice and then steal it instantly. I mean,
Hmm.
the fact that there is no limitation on that is just totally insane. And what makes it more insane is that apparently it seems like the ruling has come through that if even if they have a copy out already, you can still steal it. So you
Yeah,
could do
of
something
course.
like they have a duped wall, right? You go sow the wall, the dupe goes into the discard pile. You won that challenge, you pillage, you take the wall. Now you both have the wall. And it's just
Yeah.
totally insane. I mean, the wall isn't as great if you're not going to have Night's Watch guys out, but still, it's pretty cool having a wall on your
Yeah.
side. I'm a little bit surprised there's no limitation to cost. It just means not only is he great now, he will always be great. Like there's never going to be that location where you say, man, he can't take that one. He will always be able to take every single location. He is pretty bananas when he works.
He's good.
All right, let's look at our 6 cost guy. Also quite strong. Balin. I mean, he has old fashioned intimidate, right? I mean,
Yep.
that's what I call it. 1.0. This skill was intimidate, but essentially he can make it so that he can't block challenges, and he's got some cool synergy with Iron Fleet Scout. You kneel that, you buff him. They have a guy in there that's a 6, and they're like, yep, boom, take that. I will buff him too. Your guy's a 0 now. Oh, did I win by 5? Actually, I won by 7. Boo! Put to the sword. You know what? Let's follow that up with a We Do Not Sow now that it's unopposed since your guy has no strength. Sorry about
Yeah.
that.
Maybe this is making me think maybe we play a Greyjoy with the banner for Tyrell so that Marjorie can buff him up and make it so that anything with a 7 strength or lower just doesn't contribute to that challenge.
Yeah, because 7 strength, lots of people have more than 7 strength. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting idea. I mean, he's really strong. He's really strong, and then when you combo him with either the best location or the second best location in the game, it's a bit debatable. He becomes even better. I mean, that dude with stealth, that's kind of crazy. So yeah, and he has renown, and then so this location, this is just crazy. You can draw a card or gain power. Let's see, what do I want? Is this a game where I'm kind of rushing them down, or is this going to be a little bit longer where I need a card? And by the way, I can do this twice. I mean, this is a crazy good card.
It's definitely a very strong, repeatable card draw, which is, at least in 1.0, is how you won, and in 2.0 seems to be very, very helpful to your cause.
Yeah, that's for sure. Can't get the 27 card hands anymore, but still, it's always nice to be repopulating, especially with Greyjoy, where they're playing quite a bit of stuff, pretty happy to be repopulating, and don't have insight characters. So this is really the spot where you're getting your draw. To me, this is a 3 of in every Greyjoy deck, because of what I said. There's not a lot of other ways to get draw. This is pretty much it. You got to go down this road. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It's a really strong, even if you don't have Balon out, still very, very strong, playing to their cohesive theme out of the core set.
For sure. All right, let's look at what may be the most used Greyjoy card, which is Asha, because since she's not loyal, she can be used out of house. And I've had a lot of decks where I've gone, Asha with stealth, Theon with stealth. Yeah, I think I'll take Greyjoy. That seems promising.
Oh, definitely. They're very strong for their cost slot. I mean, a lot of the 4 and 5 cost characters are quite strong, but stealth is such a rarity now in 2.0, and both of them have pretty solid reactions and are reduced by the noble plot. So yeah, they're definitely popular choices, and kind of the reason I think you would banner with the Kraken.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm working on a deck I call Ladies Night, and it is a Targ standing deck, and so it's stuff like Illyrio and then the Handmaiden to stand Dany. But if I put in Asha, then there's another lady, and standing Asha is even more brutal. So it's been kind of interesting figuring out exactly what faction I want to pair with Dany and her Targ minions for Ladies Night. But I think this
there are definitely some interesting options there.
All right, so and what's really interesting about Asha is if you pair her with the throwing axe, it's even more ridiculous. So Asha says if she's unopposed, she gets to stand. So you go, okay, fine. You stealthed the guy I wanted to oppose with, and now I'm forced to block with the guy I didn't want to block with. But you know what? I have to, because I can't give you another unopposed challenge, or you're going to quickly run away with the game. And then they look at Asha and they go, oh no, you have throwing axe on? So if now I do block with, say, Tyrion, because you stealth the other guy and you can't stealth Tyrion, now you just kill Tyrion. Well, that's just great.
Yeah, I'm tempted to say that throwing axe might be the best weapon out of the core set. Some of the other weapons are pretty solid also, but especially with it being non-unique and 1 cost.
Yeah. It's really
and
strong.
Just being such a threat. Yeah, I think that throwing axe is really one of the strongest weapons, if not the strongest weapon.
And I have to make an admission here. When I first saw throwing axe, I said, this is one of the cards why you can't run Greyjoy fealty, because it's so bad you don't want to play it. And so now there's not enough cards to make fealty work because you can't run enough Greyjoy cards. And then somebody either pointed out or did it to me. I think they played it once. I think it was you. You played a deck with it, and I just saw it once and was like, oh, wow, I am so mistaken. This card is bonkers. And I just put 3 in every Greyjoy deck, because when you have stealth, you can really control who is able to block and put them in a terrible spot to where they pretty much have no choice but to say unopposed. and then you play We Do Not Sow, or you stand Asha, or
Or
any
you
number of
draw
things.
or get power, and
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, it ends
it's
up being a
something.
disaster. So this card is really critical to what Greyjoy is trying to do. Don't think that your opponent's just going to go, well, that's fine, I'll just leave it unopposed, because you can punish them so badly. So, yeah, great
Yeah.
card. I love it. 3 of it in every Greyjoy deck. All right, let's go to our boy Theon. We've already been talking about him. Theon is really strong for a 4-drop. Bicon 3 with Stealth and Pseudo Renown. That's
Hmm.
really strong, Neil.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite strong. He's a lord, so you can reduce him if you need to with the plot. He's Ironborn. It'll be interesting if we see any negatives to the ally trait. That was a big thing in 1.0. We'll see
Yeah.
if in the packs we start getting cards to target those sort of characters. But one thing I want to mention is that you've noticed on 3 of these 4 sort of top line Greyjoy characters, they have the military and power icons.
Mm-hmm.
Greyjoy is one of the houses where I'm really tempted and interested to try running the attachments that give you more icons, specifically in this case, intrigue.
Yeah.
So then you're getting your stealth, especially for someone like Asha, in multiple different challenges, and you can really control the landscape of the challenges, control that math, and stealth out who you need to get the challenges off.
Yeah, it's also good protection against Tears of Bliss. I've
Mm.
gotten, kind of lazy playing as Baratheon and just kind of being like, well, Mel's my most important character and she can't die to Tears of Bliss, so whatever. Unopposed intrigue, I don't care.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to get burned really hard playing Greyjoy where they're just like, who do I kill? I can kill any of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. I put 2 of Little Bird in my Greyjoy deck, and I was pretty happy with it. I got it out on somebody useful. I can't remember who it was, but it did work. And also, all 4 of the people we've looked at so far, all Ironborn. And
Mm-hmm.
Neil, is there somebody that can really abuse this fact that they're Ironborn? Coming out of the deeps, it's Aaron Damphair.
Yeah, he has a very, very strong ability.
What's interesting though, I have found it really hard to win dominance as Greyjoy. Reason being that I can't find room to put in um, what is it called?
The Iron
The
Throne.
Iron Throne. Yeah, because if I'm running fealty, because I already said I have a hard time bannering with somebody else because then you lose a lot of the synergy. And so then I can't find room for Iron Throne with all the other events I want to run. I feel like if I'm going to run Greyjoy and I'm going to get all these unopposed challenges and I'm going to be able to buff them to be over 5 strength, I'm sort of locked into having to play at least 2 put to the swords, and then you're locked into the 6 resources, and there's just so many neutrals you're already locked into. I have a really hard time finding room for Iron Throne on the off chance that I get Damphair to be able to combo with it.
Well, then just play no agenda, and then you can put as many neutrals as you want.
That's reasonable. It's reasonable, Neil. The only problem is you lose the ability to do some stuff, and we'll talk about it in a minute. Some really clever things. But yeah, Damphair's a very interesting card where on his own, a monocon for 3 is not very good. But he
No.
does put the fear of God into your opponent. The fear of the drowned God, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
That they have to win dominance or they're completely screwed every turn. And so you can do different things than you normally would, knowing that they're probably going to leave that last guy back, right? So if you just do an intrigue challenge when they only have one guy standing, and if they kneel him, your 1 gold is going to win, they're like, you go, you know what? I bet he's not going to block. I bet this will be unopposed. And I have a We Do Not Sow in hand. I'm going to be able to actually use that, and I'm going to turn this game to my advantage, all because they were worried about Damphair. So he unlike Joffrey, who just kind of sits there as his 3-cost monocon and goes, hey, maybe I'll be useful. Oh, I wasn't again. Damphair actually scares your opponent, which I like.
But of course, the best combo is making a deck combining Joffrey and Damphair so that You're
Oh
killing
no.
off all of your Ironborn lords and Joffrey gains all of this power. Then Damphair just brings him back so you can kill him again, and then
Yep.
brings him back so you can kill him again, and you just get about 700 power in 2 turns.
This
At
very
least that's
much.
that's the hypothetical.
This seems like a Neil deck. This is not a Tiny
Yeah,
Grimes deck. Tiny Grimes looks at that deck and goes, "That deck will never work." And Neil looks at that deck and goes, "Tiny, it might work."
it might work once.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all I need.
Right. It's a different mindset here on Summer is Coming. But yeah, so I think at some point that combo may be reasonable, right? Not probably
Yeah,
never top tier. I hope not. It sounds like a pretty
probably not.
degenerate deck, but you never know. It could move up to tier 2 at some point with more cards.
Maybe.
All right, let's look at some other cards here. We've got Blackwind's Crew. They're pretty good. They've got Pillage to help you fill out that discard pile, so good old Euron can come in and pillage. Long term, this card probably loses a lot of value as we just get better 3 drops to replace it. But for now, it's pretty much a 3 of in a Greyjoy fealty deck.
Yeah, it's a really solid 3 drop, and it can take attachments unlike the armies, so you can give it Little Bird to make it a Tricon if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an Ironborn, so it can be brought back from the dead by a bunch of stuff, so I like it.
Yep, it's certainly a reasonable card. Let's see who else. Oh, Alanis Greyjoy. She's the most disappointing card in Greyjoy, I feel like, because she's a pretty important character, she's unique, and she's just not very good.
But she fits in your Ladies' Night deck.
No, I don't like to run any copies of her. The only reason I run a copy in normal Greyjoy is because of that beautiful, beautiful intrigue icon that is so lacking that I'm usually like, well, I guess I'll run one, and as soon as the first chapter pack comes out, hopefully I'll be able to say, "You're out of here, Alanis. You've been replaced and upgraded." It's just such a disappointing card. Reducing someone's reserve by 1 in a normal Greyjoy deck is not that good. Now, remember, I was talking about maybe trying to figure out a choke deck. She could be a really critical piece of that deck. I'm just not sure we're quite there yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen people playing very low reserve values for her ability to really kick in and do any real work. So I like the idea, and I like that there will be cards that mess with reserve, but it just seems too early for her to be useful.
Yep, I agree. She's also looks really weird. That wouldn't be a reason for me not to play her, but you know.
Sure.
All right, the Drowned Men is another card that I really don't like at first blush. It just
Hmm.
looks like a substantially worse guy than the Pillaging guy that we just looked at, who I already said is not that great. But it can get pretty big if you play a bunch of Warships. You're going to get the Great Kraken. You're running 3 of them. So he's basically a 4/4. You're probably going to hit 1 Scout because you're running 3 of those. So now he's a 4/5. Still a 4/5 Bicon that doesn't do anything else, that has no attachments. It's not that great, but it moves out of the unplayable garbage status to wish I didn't have to play him, but I probably do status.
Yeah, it's okay for the core set, but
Yeah.
we'll see what replaces him in the near future.
Yeah, the very, very, very near future. Let's see who else we have left here. We have the best Greyjoy card of all, the Fishmonger, another ally. So it's funny, like you said before, when I first looked at the core set, I was like, all
Hmm.
right, oh god, there's all these allies. This guy's garbage, Theon's garbage. And it just, now, I've completely switched gears, and I just completely ignore the ally trait. So it's going to be very interesting when I have to
Yeah,
retrain myself. Like, what? That guy's an ally? I didn't know that. I'll get blown out at least twice, I'm sure of it.
at least.
Yeah, at least. The Shipwright, he's pretty interesting. I know you thought he was very lackluster at first. Did you get any moments with him that turned you around at all? Now you think he's at least decent?
No, not really. I think he's still pretty lackluster. I mean, specifically in the matchup against Baratheon, he can be pretty strong to turn off things like Chamber of the Painted Table and the Red Keep,
Mm-hmm.
but it feels very matchup dependent. And a lot of decks won't have that many great locations other than just income locations that don't care that much if they're knelt.
Sure.
Um, so I don't like him that much, especially the one strength and a single icon and two cost for me is I don't know. I'm not a big fan. Maybe there will be a way that it really does shut down some decks, but I don't see it. I don't think it's very good.
Yeah, I think I pretty much have to disagree with you 100% on that one. I think for the core set, he's quite good because at 2 cost, it's just nice to have a chud out. You don't have to kill, one of your big guys, so that's fine. I always like having chuds, and 2's a fine chud price now. In 1.02 would have been really expensive for a chud, but it's pretty much good now. You're definitely right about the icon, so I'm pretty happy. So this is the way I think about him. You're often going first as Greyjoy. So if they have, let's say they play their King's Road, you can usually just kneel it, right? They take an action. They play the King's Road. You kneel it. Now they can't pop it. They play their in-house reducer. You immediately kneel it. Now they can't use it. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunities to kind of screw your opponents just enough to where it's annoying. And if you can do that repeatedly for only 2, I feel like it's worth it because you have the opportunity to maybe do that, and then you have the ability to kill him as a chud. So I'm pretty happy with him.
Here's my issues with that, though, is that you're saying both you can do it repeatedly to get value, but you're also going to kill him. So you're not going to be doing it repeatedly.
Well, my point
You're
is
going to be doing it maybe once and then having him killed.
Maybe.
And he's not even going to be blocking to stop unopposed. He's going to just be knelt down there. As well, if you're kneeling him to stop maybe their in-house reducer, you paid 2 of your own gold.
Yeah.
And they've cost nothing.
Sure.
For him kneeling and you having another guy there who's not going to do anything in challenges. As well, all of his usefulness is dependent upon your opponent. If your opponent isn't running locations that are good for him to kneel, he's awful. If your opponent doesn't draw the locations that he kneels out for value, he's awful. If your opponent even draws those but has better plays because they see that you put him down, he's still awful. I really don't think that this card at this point is very good.
Yeah. And to me, it's about flexibility, and that's what I like about him. Like you said, you can kill him, but if they have a good location out, I'm not going to kill him. I'm just going to kneel that good location every single turn, and then it is repeatable. And if the situation occurs that you described, where they don't have locations, then just kill him as a chud, and it's fine. The big problem is Wildfire. He has to die. And so there is some timing issues there, that if you have a pretty big board, you really can't play him because then you're only getting that one usage out of him. It's usually not going to be that good. Though I would say if they have the red keep out, he's pretty amazing. Being able to stop your opponent from drawing 2 cards every turn with just this dude is quite fantastic. So, I don't know. I think he's good. I would definitely agree he's not always good. There's been plenty of games where I've had him in hand and said, this is not the game for him. But theoretically, he feels quite strong. And in a choke deck, we keep coming back to this if scenario, right? If there's a choke deck, he would be a pretty fundamental piece in it. So I don't know if there's I know there's a choke deck. I don't know if there is a good choke deck yet to be made. All right, let's move on to I think one of our other favorite cards. Even though he is a monocon, this is what you want to see from a 2-cost chud in Greyjoy. Stealth. More stealth. All the stealth all the time. Oh, man. Playing Baratheon against Greyjoy and having the red keep out is frustrating. It is very hard to prevent them from winning a single power challenge every single turn when you can kneel out 2 of their guys and they still have 1 dude with stealth. It becomes very difficult. Bob gets stealth every single turn, and they often are still able to win them. And this chump with only 2 strength, he still wins challenges because he alone says, hey, Bob, just sit out this one. It's cool. We'll be fine. It can be really annoying.
Yeah, thus shutting down the red keep draw, thus devaluing the shipwright even more.
Always back to the shipwright. The eternal argument. I think it's funny that this whole episode is boiled down to who is right about some chumpy little two drop. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, but no, this guy's very good, and you can give him the attachments to give him other icons to further spread the stealth love all
Yeah.
over the place, and yeah, just a good card.
Yep. And if you're already running Little Bird for your other guys, I like that idea. Stick it on him. All right. Now this guy, he's just bad. Salty Navigator. This is a two drop you don't want to have. This is a monocon that does nothing. We already talked about military. Probably the least valuable challenge of the moment. Is the initiative really worth it, Neil? I haven't had a situation where I thought like, oh, I need one more initiative. Maybe if you're running 3 of these and you get them 2 out and then you're just winning every turn initiative. I don't know.
Yeah,
Doesn't seem
maybe,
good.
but I think that there's enough plots out of the core set that you can build a pretty strong initiative deck anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think he's very good. Maybe someday, if there are enough cards that key off of initiative, he'll become a nice addition, but he's pretty bad right now.
Yeah. I mean, he's Ironborn, so you could conceivably have him as a chump that you're continually bringing back and continually getting that bump, but I don't use him right now. I almost said my 3. I only own 2. My 2 copies of the Salty Navigator are tucked away into that teeny tiny pile of Greyjoy cards that don't get used with fealty.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. I'm not sure if there's anyone left that we haven't talked about, so let's talk about some other pieces. Let's talk about the events. So we've talked about We Do Not Sow already. This card is probably the scariest card, and the reason why you don't want to lose unopposed. Like, it's annoying having Asha do a second challenge, but it's not usually game breaking. It's if they have the Great Kraken out, yes, but if they don't, even one unopposed challenge, you kind of stare at your opponent. I often will stare at you when you say unopposed, and I kind of try to read you. Does he have a wry little smile? Is the corner of his lip going up a little bit? Is he excited that I might say unopposed here? Does he have the damn We Do Not Sow? He doesn't even need a money left because he has fealty. Oh, this card is so wrecking when you have cards like the Painted Table out and Red Keep, and you're 100% depending on them. You can't let any challenge go unopposed. It's not even a challenge type. Anything. And you just blow up anything you want. This card is crazy good.
Yeah, you do often stare at me before declaring defenders, and it makes me very uncomfortable.
That is the goal.
But this is a great card at a good cost. Unopposed is such an easier requirement to meet than 5 strength in a military, making this just a much stronger in-house version of Put to the Torch. So yeah, if you're running Greyjoy, you should run it. It's great.
Yeah, this to me is a 3 of automatically. It's just absolutely phenomenal. All right, Kraken's Grasp. It's a really annoying card because it doesn't do that much on its own, right? There aren't that many challenges where it's like, if I lose this challenge, I lose the game. Except for the fact that it pairs with everything Greyjoy is already doing. Because it often means if you have stealth and you stealth the one guy and there's one guy left to block, then you Kraken's Grasp him. Now his strength drops to 0. All of a sudden it's unopposed. Bam! All the effects we've already talked about.
Synergy.
Yes, definitely the synergy. Because I mean, when you just look at this card in a vacuum, you go, "It's not that good. I don't think I would play it in my deck."
Really?
But then when you look at it synergistically, it's insane.
I think a zero cost event is always worth considering at this point.
I'd agree with that,
Especially
but
if it messes up the challenge math and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't have all of the unopposed stuff, I would still think that this is a pretty strong event.
I don't think I would run it because of the situational nature. You have to be a first player. It's only a defending character. So it's very situational. It kind of reminds me of Ours is the Fury, where it's a very situational card, but it fits really well with the deck that it's in. And independent of that deck, it probably wouldn't be that good. That's kind of how I feel about Kraken's Grasp.
Maybe, but the difference is this is zero cost,
Yeah.
so your opponent can't really see it coming.
Yeah, they can never rule it out, and then it
Yeah.
becomes really annoying if, like, if you have the red keep out and they have, especially if they get a hand going. Like, if you have 6 cards going into challenges and I haven't looked at your hand in a while, I'm pretty darn terrified. I'm terrified not only that I have to block everything, but I'm terrified that you also have Kraken's Grasp to double screw me. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a pretty solid card.
Yeah.
And then the last Greyjoy event is also quite powerful and also very dependent on running a heavy Greyjoy deck. Save a guy, comes
Yeah.
back, and he's stronger.
Yeah, but having a save is pretty cool. It was it felt way more important in first edition when everything was always dying,
Yeah,
but it's still a nice way to now it's less of a game swinging play of not losing all of your characters, and now it's more of a tempo play of thought I was going to have less icons and stuff. Well, guess what? I have a little more strength and still keep those icons.
yeah. I think I could see myself cutting this, which
Really?
shocks me. When I first opened the
Yeah.
core set, I thought this is a 3 of every Greyjoy deck from now until the end of time. But like you said, stuff doesn't die that much. This was really great against Valor. You could do an offensive Valor and save a couple guys and come out way ahead. Just military is not as valuable, and we'll see. Maybe it will become better as we go. But for me right now, I'm still including it. But it's on that list of cards where I look at it and whenever I draw it, I'm like, could this be something else? I mean, would I rather have something else in this spot? So it's clearly a powerful card. I just don't think in the current spot of the game that it's as powerful as at least that I thought it would be. I thought it would be, a top 5 event in the game, and I don't think it's in that category.
Yeah.
All right, we've got some locations. We already looked at the good ones. So we've got the Sea Tower, pretty basic reducer.
Yep.
Put it in your deck. You're happy, at least if you're in house. Iron Fleet Scout is really interesting because it's not loyal. But like a lot of Greyjoy cards, it's kind of pseudo-loyal. Like, are you really
Mm-hmm.
playing this if you're bannering? I don't know. I don't think you are.
Yeah,
It's,
unless you're really going heavy into the banner, which feels like it's tough to do with only a core set.
yeah, it'd be really interesting to build a deck that's something like Dany, her dragons, the Handmaidens, and then a million Greyjoy cards.
Yeah, and one
Maybe.
day we'll be able to do it once there's enough cards for all of the factions. You can really just take the bare minimum of your core I mean, it allows you technically to just take
One card?
yeah, one card in
One
the
loyal card
faction.
that you really want?
Yeah. I
Drogo.
guess technically you could take 0, but then it doesn't make any sense.
No, it does. It's the ultimate deek. They're like, you're like, I'm a Lannister. And they're like, okay, I know how to play against Lannister. And you're like, sure you do. Psych, I was actually Greyjoy. Yeah, that would be really interesting. You just play Lannister for Tywin or something, or just for
Yeah.
Dany, or Khal Drogo, and you make a claim deck. Yeah, it really opens up a very interesting space moving forward. We'll have to see how they occupy that space.
One day.
All right, I believe we've covered all of Greyjoy. So coming back around, how do you position Greyjoy right now with the houses? I know it's too early for us because we haven't really covered every house, but out of the ones, we'll just talk about the ones we've reviewed so far. So that's what, 4. This is our 4th one we've reviewed. So we have Bera, Lannister, Tar, Greyjoy. Where are you slotting Greyjoy right now?
Among those 4, I would say that they're about equal with Targ, a little below Lannister and a little below Baratheon, maybe. Maybe a little equal with Lannister. I think that they're one of probably the stronger houses out of the core, especially as a mono faction, whether you're doing fealty or no agenda. I think that they hold their own very well and just have a lot of cohesive synergy that makes them into a pretty easy to build, strong, aggressive deck.
Yeah, I agree. I know I said earlier that I didn't really like them, but that's different from them being good. And I think they are good. To me, so far, I think Bear's probably top. I thought Lannister was top. I think Lannister's probably second. And then I probably would put Greyjoy third, not knowing what to do with Targ. I feel like there's something there with Targ. I just can't quite find it. So currently I'd probably put Targ a little bit below Greyjoy. Greyjoy is a little bit easier to build, right? You just stick in good dudes. You play fealty most likely. Maybe you decide there's too many neutral events you need. You go no agenda. And then you just punch people in the face. Whereas Targ feels like there's a lot of different decisions you have to make for deck building. And it's making it sort of difficult to put that together.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Neil, I think it's time for that part of the show where you perfectly answer whatever I ask you, and you make me look like an idiot. So you ready for that part of the show, Neil?
Sure. Yeah, let me find a card to stump you with.
I don't think I can stump you anymore. We've already looked at 4 of the factions. You play Night's Watch. I mean, I'm pretty limited in what I can ask you here, but I'm going to try. I'm going to go into this faction and see what I can find here. We should probably be smarter about this and have our cards picked out ahead of time. But I think this must be half of the fun, is finding the card on the fly. Let's see. I will go with this card. Are you ready? It's not that tough. It is Maester Lomies.
Maester Lomies. So I believe he's the Maester for House Tyrell.
He sure is.
I think that he is 3 cost, 3 strength, intrigue icon, the trait Maester, and he says reaction after you win an intrigue on defense, discard a card at random from your opponent's hand.
That is pretty much exactly spot on. It might have even been word for word. I wasn't paying that close of attention, but yeah, there you go. There's Maester Lomies. Of course, Neil knocks it out of the park, and now I
built
like a fool.
Tyrell deck recently, and so I did look at him.
All right, Neil, what you got for me?
I'm going to give you the card Dothraki Sea.
Man, we even reviewed this, but this is how we reviewed it. Well, this card is garbage.
Yeah.
Oh no, Dothraki Sea. Well, I know it's Targ.
Mm-hmm.
It is a location.
Yep.
I'm gonna say they overcosted it at 2. It seems like it should be 1.
It is 1.
Okay.
It is right. 1.
It's 1. Let's see. What does it do? It is after you win a challenge with a Dothraki character. Is that part right?
Not really.
Okay.
What type of challenge do you have to win?
Oh, it's got to be military.
Nope.
Okay, it's power. After you win a power challenge, put a Dothraki into play from your hand.
And
sacrifice the location.
And
kneel the Dothraki.
No.
Dang it.
If the Dothraki's still there at the end of the phase, it jumps back to hand. Cannot be saved.
Okay. Fair enough.
So it's sort of like
dirty, sneaky
1.0 core set Drogo, I think, if I'm remembering him correctly, where you can just jump Dothraki into play, and they come back to do it again. But yeah, it's a terrible card right now.
Yeah, it really, 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 really is. I can't believe you stumped me with a card we reviewed. It's so embarrassing. Oh my goodness. Oh well. Embarrassing things happen here all the time. Well, everybody, thanks so much for stopping by for episode 4 of Summer is Coming. We'll see you again next week, Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific at Twitch TV /TinyGrams. Have a good week.